The Chiapan jungle was sweating at dawn. Through the mist, the Temple of the Inscriptions in Palenque emerged like a silent colossus, its walls covered by centuries of moss and roots. Dr. Sofia Morales, a Chilean archaeoastronomer whose prestige was on the decline, leaned over a recently unearthed slab, brushing away the red dust with a small brush. It wasn't a common Mayan relief. Beneath the layer of sediment, the figure of a white sphere appeared, surrounded by wavy lines that fell downward like streams of fire. Around it, warriors and priests pointed to the sky with gestures of fear and reverence, and at the bottom, symbols that looked more like equations, ratios, angles, a series of circular marks that didn't fit the known Mayan calendar. "This isn't Mayan," Sofia whispered, adjusting her fogged-up glasses. "This is much older." The finding had come to light during the restoration of a passageway blocked since pre-classic times. Carbon-14 analysis of the sediments indicated an age far predating the Mayan civilization, about 12,000 years, thousands of miles away in the Algerian Sahara Desert. The night wind swept sand over the rocky hills of the Tassili Massif. The Algerian archaeologist Youssef Ben Khaled illuminated rock paintings, barely visible under the patina of time, with his flashlight. The figures showed prehistoric hunters alongside animals now extinct in the region. And, in the sky, a gigantic disk with radial lines suggesting movement. A sequence of panels depicted this disk approaching until it nearly filled the entire sky. In the last panel, the disk appeared stationary over a blue circle the sea and a brown semicircle the land. Youssef photographed the set and sent the encrypted images to a single person, Sofia Morales. The attached message was brief. "I found what you were looking for. It's the same story. On 2 continents." 2 weeks later, in the laboratory of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, Sofia placed the images side by side, the Palenque slab and the Tassili paintings. The coincidence was unsettling. In both, the sky showed a new celestial body entering the terrestrial scene. In both, the human figures appeared terrified. And in both, there were symbols that seemed to belong to no known culture. A tingle ran down her spine. These weren't accounts of eclipses. They weren't myths about comets or meteor showers. They were visual chronicles, of the moon's arrival. And if those chronicles were true, the moon hadn't always been there. Someone had brought it. Sofia didn't know it yet, but her findings were about to become the first domino in a chain that, in less than 6 years, would push all of humanity to the brink of destruction. The conference room at the International Congress of Archaeoastronomy in Berlin was packed. Sofia Morales, her hands trembling slightly, projected the images from Palenque and Tassili onto the screen. The murmurs turned into stifled laughter when she mentioned the 12,000-year dating. Dr. Morales, double quotes, said a German academic, raising an eyebrow. "Are you aware that your hypothesis contradicts the entire accepted chronology of the Earth-Moon System S formation?" Yes, and I am also aware that evidence does not bend to what we think we know, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The subsequent questions were blades disguised as courtesy. Could it be contamination in the samples? Don't you think your conclusions are ... excessive? Are you sure you're not just interpreting a simple solar myth? In the end, the specialized press described her as a brilliant academic lost in extravagant theories. Yusuf, from Algiers, received similar treatment. His colleagues avoided his name, and his photos became meme material on scientific social networks. Meanwhile, at a closed airbase north of Alaska, Jake Holloway, a former U.S. Air Force reconnaissance pilot, lit a cigarette in front of a gas stove. His dishonorable discharge, officially for inappropriate conduct, had actually been a consequence of asking too many questions about images he was never supposed to see. Hexagonal structures semi-hidden under the Antarctic ice, photographed by spy satellites. On the other side of the planet, in a wooden hut in Yakutia, Siberia, Viktor Karamazov, a former commander of the Russian 14th Infantry Division, reviewed a worn notebook. On its pages, hand-drawn, were cyclopean stones, with inscriptions almost identical to those Sofia and Yusuf had shown at their conferences. He had found them during a geological exploration operation in 2016, which ended abruptly when his unit was disbanded without explanation. Both men, now outcasts from their ranks, maintained contact through encrypted channels with other expelled veterans. Special operations divers who had seen ruins at the bottom of the Arctic. Military engineers who had found impossible tunnels in Mongolia, and radar technicians who had recorded massive echoes the size of a mountain moving under glaciers. The pieces didn't fit until a former intelligence analyst sent them to images. The first, the Palenque slab. The second, the Tassili paintings, signed by Sofia Morales and Yusuf Ben Khaled. Jake put out his cigarette with a sharp gesture. Victor, I think we found the only people on the planet who know the same thing we do. Victor took a sip of vodka without looking away from the symbols. Then, my friend, it's time to assemble the team. The email from Sofia Morales landed in Viktor Karamazov's inbox in the middle of the Siberian night. It had no subject, just an attachment titled Symbolic Comparison, Opinion Requested. Victor opened it with the calm of someone who has seen too many oddities in his military life. On the screen, two images appeared, the Palenque slab and the Tassili paintings, side by side. He immediately recognized a central motif, a circular pattern surrounded by radial lines, identical to the one he had copied by hand years ago from a monolith found under the snow in Siberia, during a geological mission that was never really explained to them. This can't be a coincidence, he thought, leaning over the table. In Fairbanks, Alaska, Jake Holloway was reviewing old photos when he received Victor's message. Look at this. They're the same symbols we saw in Antarctica. Jake enlarged the images and let out a dry laugh. I thought those hieroglyphs were a fake. Until now, driven by sheer curiosity, they decided to contact the author of one of the images. Yusuf Ben Khaled, the Algerian archaeologist, responded politely, intrigued that two ex-military men from rival countries recognized patterns he himself had found in the desert rock paintings. A few days later, they managed to organize an encrypted video call between four people who had nothing in common. Except for a budding obsession: Sofia Morales, Yusuf Ben Khaled, Viktor Karamazov, and Jake Holloway. In the chat, the coincidences were startling. Geometric symbols repeated in findings separated by oceans and millennia. Estimated dates always close to 12,000 years ago. Graphic representations of a celestial body suddenly appearing in the sky. The conversation was peppered with jokes about how the scientific community had labeled them as fantasists or YouTube archaeologists. Sophia summed up everyone's feeling. They don't attack us, ... but they don't listen either. The official version is untouchable. For weeks, they exchanged hypotheses, articles, and sketches. There were no conspiracies in motion, no men in black after them. Just a wall of disbelief and academic arrogance that relegated their findings to a footnote. However, something troubled them. Their discoveries fit together too well to be mere anecdotes. It was then that Victor said, maybe it's time to invite others to this table who have also seen things nobody believes. Jake nodded. Yeah. The ones who've been to places not on the maps. And so, almost without realizing it, they began to form the core of a group that, years later, would be at the center of the greatest crisis in human history. Evening was falling over Mexico City when Sofia opened the video call. The group connected as usual. Victor with a cup of black tea, Jake in a thermal shirt, Yusuf with an unlit cigarette between his lips. That day, the conversation turned to some petroglyphs found in Patagonia by one of Jake's contacts. The symbols were simple: concentric circles and a human figure with arms outstretched toward the sky. Doesn't tell me anything new, ... Victor opined. Could be anything, or it could be part of the same story we've seen in other cultures, Sofia replied. Look at the position of the hands. It's the same as on the Palenque slab. Yes, but we still don't know what it means, Yusuf intervened. It was just another conversation, one of those where no one thought they were deciphering the prelude to a real threat. Meanwhile, in a study cell in the Vatican Library, Father Ignacio Valderrama, a Spanish Jesuit, was leafing through a digital catalogue of lost Mesoamerican codices. One in particular had haunted him since his youth: the Codex Itzamna, destroyed in a fire in Merida, in Ilo Juyi. However, the Franciscans who had studied it in the 16th century had made partial copies on European paper, now scattered in ecclesiastical archives. In a yellowed notebook, Ignacio had collected excerpts from these copies. Among the most disturbing drawings, one showed two moons over the Earth, one large and familiar, and another smaller one approaching below them, glyphs that, according to the Franciscans' translations, read, "The second moon will bring the ruin of the world of men." But what most troubled the Jesuit was a subsequent sequence, a tall being, with an elongated skull and dark eyes descending from a circular object. The friars had described it as a celestial messenger. According to the text, this being had arrived with the second moon, but accidentally fell to earth, where it was taken in by the ancestors of the Maya, the messenger, before dying. Revealed to them the reason for the moon's arrival. It is not a star, but a machine. A shield for the day of the great trial. During that night's video call, Sofia casually mentioned that she was trying to get permits to consult ecclesiastical material on lunar myths. Ignacio, who had been discreetly following her academic work for years, hesitated for a moment before writing her an email. "I have information about a Mayan prophecy that might interest you. Let's talk whenever you're ready." Neither Sofia nor the rest of the group knew that this priest was about to give them a piece of information that would link their findings to a story that had been hidden for over 400 years. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter.